We'll call this meeting to order. First on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First thing on the agenda is a presentation about brown-tailed moths. Nancy,
Hello, I'm Nancy Dale. I own the Down East School of Massage, and we've been running that for the last 41 years in the town of Waldo. Do you remember when we used to complain about black flies and mosquitoes? Turns out that those pests are something that we can complain about, but we don't necessarily have to worry about disease and rashes and those things. Last year, in July, I got up one morning and went to the school, and the whole front of my building was covered with brown-tailed moth, just plastered. And my husband, guy that he is, got out his shop vac, and we hosed them down and sucked them up and got rid of them. Turns out that they don't like soapy water, which is a good thing, because it means you don't have to get out the DDT and those sorts of things. Flash forward this year, we turned out our outside light for a period of time, knowing that it was getting around time for them to coordinate their effort to spread themselves. And so one morning I came downtown, and the whole front of the Waldo post office was covered with brown-tailed moth. And I went inside and I said, "You got brown-tailed moth all over the front of your building, you got to do something about them." And they came out and like, wow, yeah, they're all here. And then I went to the bank at Damascata, and they were all over the bank. And then I went to Hannaford, and they were all over Hannaford. Any place that had a bright light, they were everywhere. So I started thinking, and I talked to Bob Butler, and it seemed to me that we have an area problem. We don't have an individual problem. We've got a pest that the hairs from these things stay in the ground that they litter for 3 years. So you can rake the leaves 2 years later, and if there's brown-tailed moth hairs in them, you can get a rash from that. You can also inhale them and get sick from them. I went to the cemetery right after Memorial Day weekend over at the German church, and put flowers on my mother's grave, and I got a brown-tailed moth rash in the back of my neck. I was bending over to, and that was the only thing that was exposed was the back of my neck. So my daughter and I both got the rash. Recently, I had some clients, a family, come in for massage, and they're from New Jersey, and they like to come up here every year. They didn't come up last year during COVID, but they came here. And the first thing that happened was their 14-year-old son got brown-tailed moth rash. So welcome to Waldo Borough and our problem. So I did a little research, very little, but a little enough to know that there are other towns around here that have formed task forces and are looking at the problem of how to educate their public and what to do about the pests. And Camden has on their website a very tasteful little black box there, and if you click on that, it gives you all this information about it for the public. So how to get in touch, what to do, and I printed out a whole pile of stuff for you. A brochure, brown-tailed moth infestation in Camden was the one piece that I printed out. And it talks about the background, the life history, the recognition of it, and the defoliation of what happens to the trees because it'll eat up the trees, and how toxic the hairs are, and information about what to do. And I even printed out, you can see on there that they link to the main forest, but they also have on there a whole list of the arborists that will come and cut down nests for people. So I printed that out. It's quite impressive as far as the, how many arborists are around that will deal with the problem. What I'd like to see the town of Waldo do, first off, is to put on their website something like this, so that there's a place for the community of Waldo to go to find information and to find links. I also went to the main CDC and found that they have information there. And I also went to the Maine Department of Agriculture, and they have information there. So those are great links for the town to set up so that people can go to those. And I went so far as to find the state entomologist, Tom Schmielk, and he called. I didn't actually connect with him physically, but he sent me an email. He couldn't come tonight to talk to you about brown-tailed moth, but he seemed incredibly reachable and willing to work with any committee that was willing to look at this particular problem. I see this particular pest as an irritant physically to us, as well as to our beautiful countryside. And something that if we sit on our hands and don't do anything and don't educate the public, then we're just going to be in more and more trouble with it. So that's basically it. Any questions?
I just want to point out that during brown-tailed moth season at the beginning, we did have information on the website. It wasn't in the little black, but it was in our news section of it. Having had personal knowledge of the brown-tail, and it took 2 years to get them off of our property, they're stubborn. And it is, when you don't realize what it is and you think it's poison ivy, it is terrible. So, and they stay, like you said, tearing off something off the back of the house. My son-in-law, when we were doing some remodeling, they hadn't been there in 2 years, and he still got the rash just when stuff came out of the soffits. So they are...
They're wicked nasty. Well, I found out that if you take Scotch tape after you find out that you have the rash, that'll take off some of the residual hairs that you can't see or feel, and then get the cream from the drugstore. But nasty stuff, and we want people to come to Maine. We're living with ticks and those sorts of things, another lovely pest. But the brown-tailed moth, in the summer, where we want everybody to come, it's a bad thing. So I hope that you will.
Unfortunately, by the time they're at the moth stage, there's not much you can do to eradicate them. You got to get them at the inchworm stage or whatever stage.
Well, that's actually not true. Once they come out as a moth and they're all over the side of your building,
well, you could
kill all those.
Well, you could at least kill them, but
Yeah.
it's from everything that everybody I've talked to, that it, even before, like when the nests are, you're going to see them. When the leaves are off, taking those down. We actually put the tape on the trees to try to help, and that helped significantly. So,
right. So I think that Tom Schmielk would come to town if that was something that the town was interested in doing for educational purposes. The entomologist, and just put this in your lap to see what you think about forming a committee to deal with it.
Nancy, what is the actual season for those? Like when would it be most advantageous for citizens to do something?
Right, so I'm not an authority on the brown-tailed moth. I just am an individual that wants to see that type of information brought out by a committee. However, there's a time of year when, as Julie said, they're up in their nests and those can be cut down before they become a problem. But in July is when they come out and fly out and land on everything, and then that's an opportunity to kill them and get them to as well.
The nest though can be, I mean, like in our trees, I mean, they were in the tops of the oak trees.
Yeah.
And that was 2017, 2018. They got taken down in the end of 18, and the trees are just now recovering from, they love to munch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a friend who took down all her oak trees just to prevent them from coming. She just had them all removed.
I mean,
wow.
Knock wood,
Yeah.
we haven't seen one.
Yeah, we were lucky because our neighbor sprayed. We didn't have an infestation, our neighbor did, and I think we've been living off that occurrence. I don't think in the long run that we're gonna be any safer than anybody else. I like Nancy's suggestion of forming a group. Maybe it's the conservation
That's what I was
committee
gonna say, is
Yeah.
maybe it's
Take
something
this
the
on.
conservation committee look
and
at,
help us
form another group.
with the education process.
Well, the one thing I would say about the Conservation Committee is they have a very specific agenda. I don't want to speak for them, but I think that when you're starting to I don't want to overload them. I'll defer to you on that, Will, but.
I think it's more just an education thing than actually doing a lot of work.
Yeah, it is.
But you've got the town forest to worry about too.
We have that.
I don't wanna
We have
overload it.
The Woodbury Fields, the quarry, and it's got a lot to do right now. Not many volunteers. So.
It would be nice if there was a committee when a member of the community has a question that they could call a town office and be directed, or they could go to the website and find out who to contact. So
Easier to put it on the website as a.
I can put it on, I just, honestly, I think it's still technically there, it's not coming up because so many other things we put in the news after technically the season was over. But, I mean, that's easily fixed, but you know me, I'm always like, we have too many committees, but I just think that would be a little overwhelming. I know, I just had a conversation with some of the members of the Conservation Committee. They have a lot going on. So I think if it's going to be the committee, it should be separate from the Conservation Committee.
It would be nice if, in a timely fashion, if we had, you said the person who's in charge, if that person would come, if we had it at the right time prior to when people could do something. I ran into that this year. I never have before. And I have apple trees near me, but no oak. But every time I went out, when I'd come in, I had just this awful.
yeah, it is.
Yeah, it was
It is
just a
bad.
burning awful. I can't remember when it was this summer, but in a timely manner, when everyone when lots of people are dealing with it, it would be good to become more educated on what we can do and with a group effort.
What about working with the high school and the horticultural department there? That either someone that's in charge of that or even some students that might be interested in volunteering to participate in a task force of this sort. It's a thought of getting the community to participate so that it's not overloading your existing committees, but looking at this as a community problem. That you might have individuals in the community who would be interested in helping out.
I wonder if it would be prudent to possibly invite the individual that Nancy's talking about before the season next year.
Well, we could, but I think the idea is to have the committee. I mean, that's a decision that the select board, you guys have to make if you want a committee, and then that could be set up to have him. Because you have to start, I think, think we took our nest down once the leaves fell off, because then you could see where they were.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you might want to have it in the fall so that people are aware.
Caitlin Puhalski did a lot of, she does the gardening.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Caitlin Puhalski, Katie Everard, did some, just her own warnings about it, and I remember Facebook things she would say, this is the time, check out your trees, this, and she might be interested in.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Well, we
think it would
could,
be
I
a
mean, if
simple
you're,
thing.
if you guys are interested, we can set up the committee, we can put the call out for volunteers on Facebook.
It wouldn't take too many, I wouldn't think. I mean, it'd be a simple thing, just get someone to come talk and get people here to listen. I'd be interested in
There's
listening
lots of
to them.
information out there. There's existing brochures with the Department of Forestry. Like I said, there's the state entomologist who seems very approachable. You know, it's just looking at a little bit of strategic planning as to what your town is going to do about it, or besides educating the public.
It is, there was some advertising on Don't Come to Maine because of that also, this
Right.
spring. And that's, we don't want
Do we want our
that.
trees defoliated and no tourists, or do we, you know,
Yeah,
want to have something to do about it?
I was just wondering if anyone in the room has Googled brown-tailed moth remediation. I have this in my yard, and it just told me around March to go look for nests, and I went out and I torched them and I sprayed them down. And that pretty much
That's
solved the problem.
always the way I've heard, is torch them, take a little torch and.
Don't do it when it's dry, but that's a great thing about March.
Yep.
And so I'm not disagreeing with anything anyone else said as far as
Yeah.
committees and getting volunteers and all that, but a Google search will go a long way.
Yeah.
Like, some folks
That's
have done
kind of
this
why I
work.
wasn't looking for a committee or existing committee, just for informational purposes.
I was just thinking of the older folks who can't go out in the backyard and torch anything.
But if we have the
You know what I
information
mean?
of people that can do it,
Yeah,
like we have right here,
yeah,
That's
I
a lot of
mean,
great.
they need that information. It's not like
Right,
the
yeah.
committee's gonna help them. They
right,
just
to
need
get
the
that information.
Correct.
Yeah.
There you
And
go.
if the town has
Whole file.
has the information.
I'm
they
assuming
need
you'd want to be on the actual committee, right?
to Be careful what you wish for.
There it is.
I understand that, and.
Wouldn't it just be a gathering of information and have it in a spot and have somebody speak and pass?
I'd really like to
pass
see it
up?
on the website,
I
so
can
that it can be
that up
accessed
back
by
up
the
tomorrow
community. And, yeah, I'd participate. I want to thank you for your time.
Thanks, Nancy.
Cool, thank you, Nancy. I guess we have a public hearing on the liquor license for Odd Hours.
I'm still getting past the whole torch thing.
It
Hey, we
works.
get revenge on caterpillars. It's a good time.
You just get a super soaker, fill it with some gasoline.
So you've done this before, Max. Is that what you're saying?
I can neither confirm nor deny that.
All right, we got a liquor
No
license
lie.
for renewal for Odd Wives. Public hearing, would somebody like to make a motion to open up the public hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there any public comment?
I just would like you to know that there have not been any complaints filed at the police department or any issues.
I have a comment. I love their beer.
I think that's the standard comment every time.
I love their pizza.
Yeah. And beer and pizza go well together.
I'm not a beer drinker, but I do love their pizza. I do know people though who swear by their beer.
I love their flowers and gardens.
Oh,
They are
aren't they nice?
absolutely beautiful.
They're just lovely
They're
people.
very
They
good,
are
and the
really.
people. They really are.
Is there any other public comments? Hearing none, would somebody like to make a motion to close the meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Would somebody like to make a motion to act on this renewal?
I would make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'm on a roll here.
Is there any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? They are all set.
They're such an asset to our town.
Adjustments to the agenda. I think we have a couple, don't we,
So I
Bob?
think we have three. One is to assign a person to a couple of committees, and I'd recommend we put that under new business, number 10, item number 10. The second is to acknowledge a quitclaim deed under, I'll call it 1.4.1, the quitclaim deed that was received at the office after the agenda came out. And the third is to have an executive session as item number 13. The 13 is currently adjourned as select board. That would become 14, and the executive committee session would be 13. So that's my motion.
Is there a second?
Oh.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Those adjustments? Cool. All right, move on. Citizens' comments.
Anybody
You must be
online?
here for some reason, Ruben.
Everyone here seems to like beer, that's pretty neat. We'll teach Julia.
Yes.
I have a question, just obviously noting that everybody today is masked and wondering, is there a policy regarding that at meetings yet, or the reason for the masking?
No, it's just precautionary, just, there's no stunt.
So when the CDC guidance came out, and it is guidance, it's recommendation.
Yep.
We posted on the door that there was recommendations. Again, it's strictly a recommendation.
Just,
I would just say that seemed like everybody wore a mask when we came in today, so. But we're not requiring it for the general public that comes in. And I would say it's about half and half right now.
Okay, just wanted
Bob?
to check, make sure I didn't miss anything.
Isn't the guideline for Lincoln County currently a recommendation that people who are inside wear a mask?
It's a recommendation,
That is
correct?
a recommendation, yeah. So we're just following that recommendation.
yep,
Out of
so,
an abundance of caution.
And some of that is, as you know, because we've been getting a lot of calls about that. It's not like it was before. But that may change, you don't know. So we're following CDC guidance.
Sounds good.
okay. Select board comments. Bob?
I've got a few, please bear with me. One is they've been sending out information now about the November ballot questions that will be put before the voters. One concerns the construction of high-impact electric high transmission lines. We all know what that's about. That's the hydropower line that is being proposed. A second one is a $100 million bond issue to leverage money that we would get from the feds to improve roads, bridges, railroads, airports, etc. And the third one has to do with amending the Constitution of Maine to declare that all individuals have a natural, inherent, and unalienable right to grow, raise, harvest, produce, and consume the food of their own choosing. My hope is that as we approach the election, people will pay attention to these issues, will get the background information they need to make an informed decision about how they want to vote. The second point is there is an MRC update. We've been meeting in executive session the last couple of weeks. We're going to meet again next week. We're still awaiting a financing proposal from the prospective buyer, Delta Thermal. That has not yet been forthcoming. We're considering other options. But while still hoping that something will come through on this one. The third is that I attended an historical society event on Sunday, honoring the Dollar family, and I'm glad I went. I didn't know as much about the Dollar family as I do now, and I really appreciate the efforts these historical society went to bring them to the fore and give people a chance to understand who they are and how they've played an active role and how their family has played an active role in this town. A very remarkable family. And the last point is I had an incident at the intersection of Jefferson and Main Street. I was coming up Friendship Road. I stopped at the stop sign. I was turning left, and a guy from New Jersey just blasted through. I don't think he even saw the sign. So, I mean, it really brought it home to me. At a minimum, we ought to have flashing lights on those stop signs. I think there's no way anybody can miss that if they're coming to that intersection and being encouraged to slow down and watch out. So, sorry, I took longer than I usually do.
Colonel?
The only thing I have is a local gal from Waldo has just arrived in South Korea. She's in the Air Force. She's a Madomic Valley high school graduate in 2008. She's been all over the world. She was stationed in England. I know she's been on deployments in Africa, the Far East, and different places. And she's going to be soon promoted to tech sergeant. So this young lady, Karen Kaboski, is just doing great things. And I just wanted to recognize her.
Nice, very nice.
Jan?
Well, I'm going to talk about a local young person too. It's not so young anymore, but a young man who grew up in Waldboro, Lucas Mcnelly. I think most of you know him. I've been watching he directs films and creates films, and I knew he'd been doing that, and he was in faraway places. But a few years he came back home, much to his parents' pleasure. He is a co-owner of the Longwinter Soap Company right downtown. However, he's doing this film now, and as part of that, he's highlighting and showcasing places around town, and he's done such a good job. They're short, they're sweet, and it gives you some knowledge about Waldoboro, and it gives you some pride, and it helps other people know things. He's highlighted the Waldo Theater and talked about, he gives his own personal history, the things he saw there when he was a kid, telling what's going on now, and some present things, some general history and some present. He's talked about the movie Pizza Shop and about their food and checking out getting their films when he was a kid. And Sukforth Field, he was over there. I don't know I can't remember. Are there any others that he's highlighted? Any other local spots in
He
town?
was in front of the old pizza shop.
Yeah, that's
did
the
something there.
that was the movie Pizza Shop. He was
That's right.
right. He did talk about that, and Randy, who ran that, and the good food in the movies and all of that sort of thing. But it was so nice to see those, and so I sent him a little note and said, "Thank you so much for these. I've really enjoyed them." And he said, "Well, I'm just trying to showcase my hometown." And I thought, how nice is that? He's doing this film called Maine Noir, and it's going to be filmed in Waldoboro, some of it in Waldoboro. I think noir is a genre of film. I really know nothing about it, but I'm learning. And it sounds really interesting. I think, how brave to do something like that. But I just wanted to thank him publicly for highlighting and showcasing our town and all the little things that really are meaningful to many of us. The other thing as the only woman up here, I was at a function. Well, not up here. My bad. Sorry. As the only woman on the select board,
There you go.
and thank goodness we have our leader who is a woman. But sorry, Julie.
That's okay, that was
So
funny.
I got these bookmarks are being passed out, and I said, "Oh, that's nice. Can I have another one?" I was going to give to a friend, and then I looked at them, and it says, "Whenever women and girls rise, their communities and their countries rise with them." I thought that was really nice, and I thought, oh, and these were not. And looky, there's pink and there's blue. And the blue one says, "A strong woman stands up for herself. A stronger woman stands up for everybody else." And I thought those were both nice as the only woman on the select board. Am I forgiven?
Oh, you're fine, it was just funny.
I know. It was. Sorry.
Nice way to end though, I like it.
Our Public Works Department started this week placing culverts on Chapel Road in preparation of that being paved. Work is going good there. They're moving on to Castner Road next. The same thing, culvert replacement, that's going to be paved. And today, somebody dumped a motorcycle into the quarry in town. Luckily, a resident reported it to the police department, and the Public Works Department got up there and got it out before any gas or oil leaked in. So that was a good thing, but hopefully that kind of thing doesn't happen again, because we'd hate to lose that resource for the people.
Question, blueberry picking, that went well for,
It went very well, and there's still some blueberries up there. People
there still are, huh?
If people want to get up there and get them before the deer do, so.
Okay. Town managers report.
Well, I'd like to just say that you think you're gonna make a lot of blueberry pie or jam. You don't really realize when somebody says, oh, you can have 25 pounds of blueberries or buy, it's a lot of blueberries. I learned that. My town manager's report is going to be short because last week I became a grandmother again. So from Wednesday on, I was not here. But just to update you, after the last meeting with all the concern about Jefferson and Main Street and Friendship Street, I sent a letter off to the DOT. I have not had a response yet. I did follow up today and sent another email. But basically what it is, it explained people's concerns and a request for them to come down and take a look at it. So that's where we are with the DOT.
Move along to the consent calendar. Somebody like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I just want to add that the quit claim deed, did you get a copy of that? Did Tanya send
I
that
don't
to you?
believe so. I didn't see it in my packet, no.
This is for property located at 580 Bremen Road. And it's paid and released to Kevin S. King and heirs.
Cool. And I'll ask again for a motion.
I would move approval of the consent calendar with the addition of that quitclaim deed that Julie just mentioned.
Is there a second?
second that?
Is there discussion? Correspondence?
Correspondence
That's
here.
all, I see that.
Put it right up there.
To whom it may concern, thank you for selecting me as a recipient for the George Genthner Scholarship. By awarding me this gift, you are helping me focus more on my education rather than how I'm going to pay for college. I hope one day I can help younger students struggling to reach their goal of a higher education by assisting them as you are helping me. Again, thank you for your generosity. And here's to the next chapter as a UMF Beaver, where I will always be an MVHS Panther. And this is from Abby Lash, who is an athlete for Madomic Valley, all-around athlete, all-around student, and all-around just good person, good human being.
Cool.
Picked a good college.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? All right, new business. Oh, would you like to take care of that?
Well, Will and I sat down with Sarah Rich. We had a conversation with her. She's applied to both the planning board and the Sylvania Development Committee. And I don't want to speak for Will, but I think we both concluded that she would be an amazing addition to both of those boards and committees.
Absolutely.
And would therefore bring her nomination forward and nominate her to be on both of them as
Is there a second?
requested.
Second.
Any discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor? And do you have somebody else as well?
Not that I'm.
Okay, oh, I thought there was two names.
Nancy, when you come to a meeting, they put you on a committee. That's what happens.
So what committee now are we looking for?
Planning board and Browntail Moth.
Assessors? Is it the, Board of Appeals?
Board of Appeals.
Board of Appeals.
Planning board, we still have one more slot, right, Mac?
Yep, I will always take more people for the planning board.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to establish the Browntail Moth Committee and to see if we can get volunteers who are interested in it. I know at least one person on the Conservation Commission who would probably be very interested in that committee, because that person has suffered tremendously from this problem. And yeah, that would be my motion if folks are amenable to considering it now.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, for discussion, How many people are you looking to possibly put
I
on
would
there?
say 3 to 5, depending on levels of interest.
Okay. Any more discussion on it?
Is that like an ad hoc committee for?
Yes. Yeah, thank you.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor for that? One more. Roundtable Moth Committee.
Just the Conservation Commission, they
Yeah.
have a lot going on.
Yep.
Only
Cool.
my only concern.
Old business. What do we have here?
My matrix is back.
Still a copy.
You got it? Okay, we're good.
You got it?
Good.
Okay, Bob's good.
We've got a new one.
So I'll just refresh your memory. Back in the end of June, I distributed this to you guys and girls to take a look at. And what I thought we needed was something like our community forums we did, but on a much broader scale. So I came up with 4 key questions to ask. And there's 4 key questions, and then there's another subcategory of questions. So the 4 major questions are: who are we? Where are we? Where do we go next? And how do we get there? So essentially what we're going to do through a process is answer those 4 questions. And so under the question of who are we have to know our community. What are our issues, whether the critical social issues, demographics and trends, know ourselves, what is our mission, what are our town capabilities, what are our finances, where are we, what are our strengths, what do we have, what do we do well. Under that, I would review existing studies and plans. What do we need? What are our needs versus our wants, our priorities, our affordability, sustainability? Where do we go next? We have to develop some strategies, and we have to ask the right questions. What are our current opportunities and what are our challenges? And then decide, how do we get there? Organizational, selecting the right strategies would be organizational and support. What are our desired outcomes? And then we have to have an execution plan, communication plan, implementation plan, and develop partnerships. So that's what this is. And if anybody wants to see those, I have those up here. And then the next, and it's color coded, and I printed it in color, so it's much easier this time. It talks about how we start these discussions. And what I'm anticipating is almost like the community forums that were facilitated, was that each time one of these meetings occurs, there'll be a facilitator at that meeting. And I'm assuming a lot of those meetings will be held that either myself or Max will be at, and possibly other staff that will serve as the facilitators for those meetings. So I just wanted to go over with you how you feel about, after having time to look at this, is there anything on here you would change as far as, did I hit with the mark with the key discussions and who you think should be involved, and even with like the hours and assign dates to these tasks, because I'm always very aggressive, and then I realized that I had my first start on 7/27 and I'm already ready 2 weeks behind. So maybe some of you could share your thoughts on if I hit the mark with the key discussions and how you wanted to proceed from here. And basically, if you think it's a good idea or not, because you might have thoughts about that. And it's easy when we sit here and say, if we want to talk about, here's our priorities. We had that big priority list that you gave me, but this is trying to engage not only you and me, but the department heads, the employees, the public, our outside partners, it's gonna come out that in the end, we should be able to whittle it down to things that we can accomplish. And some will be long-term goals and some will be short-term goals.
I think the goals and objectives is kind of tough because every department's gonna have a different goal.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
you gotta have the goal though and prioritize
right,
them.
right.
And I think that's kind
I
of
think-
where we,
I think you would have to ask the department heads what their goals are, and then we can go from there.
well, yeah, they're one piece of the puzzle, and
Right.
we'll do that under the first staff meeting.
Mhm.
So that's, it kind of goes in procession, and for the public, I'll explain. So the prep meeting would be goals and objectives. So what's the goal and objective of what we're trying to do? And we'll outline the process. And then we'll also discuss the community needs analysis process. So I was hoping maybe not at our next August meeting, but our first September meeting, we could actually sit down and have that discussion. And then the next one would be essentially a task force meeting. And that would be where we would come together with the select board, the town manager, board committee chairs, and community members. And just to give you an idea, at that one, what we would say is, what do we want to accomplish? And what can we afford to do? Like, what are our finances like? Because you're right. The goals are long.
Mhm.
It's a long list, but what can we afford? And maybe where should those be prioritized? But everybody needs to hear what everybody else is thinking because, and I'll give you an example, just because you're in the room. Dark fiber. That's a huge project. Let's have the discussion. So is dark fiber here and affordable housing here? Where does that fall in? What do we want to pursue and put our money to? Is a community center more important than the dark fiber idea? Where do all of those things come together? And I think it's great because we'll have the chairs of the committee. So you might say, okay, this is something we should really focus on. I want to do this. When you realize what we've got to invest into something, okay, well, maybe what's more bang for the buck and what's really going to affect the most people? Those discussions have to be had because they're important.
Okay, now I'll go back to Lincoln County get $5 million for the commissioners, correct?
I think it was a little higher than that. I think it was 6.7.
Okay. Now, I believe you went to a meeting and they were trying to figure out where that money was gonna go.
Yeah, Jan talked about that meeting.
Did you talk, yeah?
I don't think they made those decisions.
No,
But-
that wasn't their job to make the decision, but it was to hear from all of the towns in Lincoln County to see what their priorities were, and then to take it back to the commissioners and
Well, I think-
the county itself.
2 points you just brought up was dark fiber and affordable housing. Does that fall under that criteria of what they have for money?
Oh, they heard a lot about
I heard a lot about internet stuff.
internet
Yeah.
and things like that, but they also heard a lot about affordable housing.
Yeah.
Believe me, I made.
Yeah, but if we can jockey in position for that money
Well, but
that
it's,
they've been allocated to Waldeboro, I mean, we can accomplish some of these goals to do that.
right. We could, but I don't know how much of that's going to be coming our way. So, but what we'll go over in that first meeting is what is our financial position as a town, number one. What other sources of revenue, because I don't think we've ever had a serious discussion even about fundraising in this community as a town. There's options we can pursue with that, and I'm not. This isn't something that's going to take 3 meetings and we're done. This is probably a year-long process, but it's a worthwhile process. And we might, along the way, find out maybe we do get some of that money. And I think part of the discussion here will have to be a regionalization discussion too, about what can we share, like we share Stan, the CEO services. Are there other things we should be looking at, and try to actually think about those types of things as we go. So then there'll be a staff meeting, and I'll sit down with the staff and try to explain to them all the methodology behind this. We'll discuss their departmental issues that impact the town and the community, and we'll discuss strategies to address the issues. And then the board will sit down, and committees, and they'll go over capital plans, operations, goals, projects. Each committee will have their chance to discuss what they feel their issues are that impact the town and the community. We'll discuss critical social issues in the community, and again, strategies to address them. So each time we meet with different people, you're going to narrow this down. And I know this seems lengthy, but I've been through this like 3 times, and it really does flow nicely once we actually sit in a room and get going. Again, after that, we'll go back to the task force meeting too, and we're going to review all the data that we get from these meetings. And if you'll recall, at the community planning session, we had all those big notebooks, the big flip charts, and we wrote down people's ideas, and no idea was not written down. And that's what's going to be very collaborative and free-flowing, I think, with this. Again, we'll go back to the staff, and we'll, again, review strategies. We'll update the capital needs, costs, and we'll discuss the big questions. And what are the big questions? And that's where we're going to have to narrow it down. So we may start out with a list of 40 things. And we might say, okay, what can we tackle? What's prioritized and tackle? And those will be the big questions we deal with. After that, we'll go to our community leader forum. We'll educate the community on what we've been doing, exchange ideas. And the other thing we have to, even though we've already had 2 community forums, I think it's important that we have a 3rd one so that they know we've been thinking about what they've been saying. And that will be one of the things that everybody reviews. So you're going to get the same materials, whether you're a board member, a community member of one of the boards, or one of you. We're all going to have the same material we're looking at. So, everybody's going to have a copy of the downtown plan. Whatever plans we have, no matter how dusty they are, we're going to brush them off, redistribute them to everybody. People have the results from the community forum. Because as I look at this, and Max can probably attest to this, as I look at reports from 2010, from 2004, the same problem still exists. So it's not like we have to really reinvent. We're not reinventing the wheel. People have looked at this and talked about this. The downtown has been talked about for a long time. So those are the things that we have to, move ahead with. Same thing with, the community center. But, some things we've never really talked about. And you're going to sit through a presentation with Karen Ann. She couldn't make it this Tuesday, but, I think the presentation on the housing needs that are going to hit us very shortly, that we've already felt the impacts of, that's going to be eye-opening. We can finalize the big questions, come up with an impact statement and a draft of a roadmap of how we get there. We'll review all the impact statements, strategic advantages, we're gonna, I didn't think about it, but I should have thrown it up on the thing. But as you go through it, you'll see how all the ideas you're gonna find, once it's all spread out and laid in front of you, that there's so much continuity to these ideas. So one thing does affect the other, and if, as you fill in all of this programming, it whittles it down to, you know, what will improve your community? What are the big questions? And it's all gonna come back, basically, most of the time, discussions like this come back between 4 and 6 big things. So that should be really interesting. And that's, in the end, we'll have a unified front. I think we'll be able to take it to the public. And I'm hoping a lot of people will participate. Somebody mentioned to me today, Jan did, one of the things that we, you know, communication's huge. That's something that came out of the community forum that I think we really tried to address with the website, being more active on Facebook, but still you get people who don't know what we're doing. And I think that was a really good lesson to us, which is what led you from the community forum and all of that to make some decisions you made last year to like put things in front of the voters, even though it was non-binding, to try to improve that communication and get people involved. So that's my strategy. I don't know if I forgot anybody in the who part, so if you want to make changes, but it's kind of my overview. I know it sounds complicated. It's going to be fun. I should mention that. When you get small groups together, it is a fun time to work. And you know, you can see the dynamic on the EDC. Our hardest job is going to be finding people out in the community to participate. And I honestly think that that's going to be our hardest thing, because people say, well, it's not going to matter what I say, but it will matter what you say. You know, and appealing to people who might not normally come to a meeting or even watch one. You know,
I think when there are issues, people will come forward. The last couple meetings we've had, I think, have been wonderful. For example, the Jefferson Street, Main Street, Friendship Street issue. There were people who showed up, and it put the whole group, everybody, into a problem-solving mode. And it was like everybody was working together to reach a goal that was good for everybody, the whole community. And we've had a couple of those recently, and when I go home, I think, well, how good is that? How nice is that? Maybe if the community members knew what some of these issues are, if they're near and dear to some people, they'll show up, and if they have a voice. And I think once we get something at I was checking out the stop signs again today to see how far they are from the sidewalk. They're like inches. One of them like inches from the sidewalk. The other one is like a foot over. You can't get much closer to the road. I don't know how you can get them closer without being in the middle of the sidewalk. But then we can do other things to them. And I think once we show that people spoke, they had ideas, we followed through, and something will happen, that maybe that kind of communication anyway will get people interested and know that their voice is important. I mean, you know, 10 voices are so much better than 2, 3, you know.
It really is, and I think too is that, and a good example of that was one of the residents who spoke last week, 2 weeks ago, did not know that, you know, we were understaffed in the police department. Did not know that. We all know that. We've talked about it at meetings, but if you're not following what's happening at the meetings and thought it was just a Waldoboro issue, not realizing that, oh wait, it's not just a police staffing issue in Waldoboro, Maine, it's a police staffing issue in Maine, in the Northeast, in the entire country. So, you know, it does put the light on things like that. And I think once the public gets the chance to talk about that, and I can't overemphasize the value of having not just me or Max, but the staff, because I'm sure when we meet, say with EMS, you know, you might get the opportunity to talk to not just, you know, Derek or Richard as, you know, the administrative leaders of that department, but the people who are actually out there. You know, I'm sure you'll hear stories of, so, you know, give us an idea of what a typical call in Waldoboro looks like. You know, what do you see as issues for our community? Because these are the people that are out there. Public Works, you know, the same thing. They can speak to the condition of our infrastructure. You know, what are the unique challenges they face? Same thing with the fire department and the police. So I think that'll be really interesting and helpful. And just figuring out what everybody needs and throwing all those ideas, even though we have a beautiful capital plan, some of this you can't put a price tag on when we have to address it.
Bob?
Yeah, I'm wondering whether this is a variation or a theme. It almost sounds to me like we're talking about a comprehensive plan, or we're going through a similar process. And I'm just wondering whether the existing comprehensive plan would need to play a role here.
Oh, well, it definitely will. Well, it's going to be. That's going to be one of those plans and documents that we have in front of us when we go through it.
Okay. Yeah.
But, so you're right, we have a comprehensive plan. Does the comprehensive plan address poverty?
I don't think, from what I've read, it's not one of its missions to address.
It's not one of its missions.
No.
So all of those plans, the downtown plan, the comprehensive plan, the results from the community navigator, the community forums, all of these things that go into this, you know, it's not just having a plan. That's great, we have a plan, but what is it accomplishing?
Right.
That's where, and what is our goal? How does Waldoboro, because I get asked this was great. I was recently at an event and I was asked, what does Waldoboro need to succeed?
Are you asking me now?
That's a question I gave an
The first thing that
answer.
comes to my mind is clean water, a clean river. That's the first thing. But again, I think you're on the right track here.
Right,
Is
and
to prioritize what the basic issues are and then move into the woods and see
And
how
that-
we
but-
can flesh them out.
and that may have been addressed in the comprehensive plan, which is good. So how does that work with these 4 other things that are here? And that's the meat and bones of it, because I think what happens with comprehensive plans is we had a wonderful comprehensive plan committee. And I hope a lot of those people will come participate.
Yeah.
But they don't meet anymore. The plan is done,
They're done.
and there it is. And it's up to us to implement some of that, but it deals with one facet, and then there's all these other intangibles, and how does it factor in? And the person I was talking to at this event said to me, you know what you need? You need a big store. You know, so to some people, that big store is the salvation of Waldoboro. To others, it's not. You know, I said, well, you know, what I need is X, Y, and Z. I don't want to put my stuff out there, but, you know, when I'm asked those questions, I have very distinct answers from the view of where I sit. But everybody is going to have different views, and I think it's just important to hear them, you know. Because, you know, you come in, and I'll be honest, you know, 4 years ago, I came in new and excited, and I'm enjoying it, and I still have that excitement. But now, 4 years later, I have the ability to look back and say, you know, what was my impression and what I thought I could do, and what was the reality of that, and what did I think differently? Because my eyes were open to things that I didn't even, you know, think to start. When I first interviewed for the job, it was great that it was a clamming town. You know, did I realize how many families derive their livelihood out of it? No, not when I interviewed, you know, and you don't think about, oh, you know, the river being clean, that's not only good for the families that make their living off of it, and that's just the clamming community. You have the Elvering community, you have the lobstering community, people who pogie, there's all these things that are going. At least I didn't call them bunker. Is that not an improvement? It's an improvement.
No, I love it. I love where you're going with this. I think it's really positive.
It just keeps everybody engaged.
Yeah.
I think we've done a lot with the commercial side of it, with the river, but I think recreational side as well needs to be enhanced more, which Max and I have been working on. And he's applied for a grant for a kayak launch at the park across from
Cool. But I mean, we've got the medical arts building to discuss, we've got sewage expansion to discuss, water distribution to discuss. We haven't
health,
finished,
hopefully
Sylvania's still on
health.
the docket, AD Gray isn't done yet. There's so much to do, and I think fitting it into a larger, broader context where people are coming together and willing to recognize the trade-offs that we have to make with the resources that we have available.
Right. But I think we got a lot going on. I think
Yeah,
we
we
just
do.
gotta organize it.
We have an awful lot going on.
Huge
Yeah.
amount.
But part of the problem is people don't know what's going on. And I don't know, and that's one of the discussions we have to have is how do you get people to pay attention? So we have articles that are written in the paper almost every week about Waldo Borough, and yet we still have people say, I didn't know anything about that. How did you not know anything about that? And so that's where, I think we have to.
I think if people wanna know, they'll pay attention. I mean, it's the same thing with the shellfish program. I mean, you gotta have your license every single year. You pay attention to it. And if it affects you, you should be paying attention to it. If people aren't affected by what we do here, they don't pay attention.
I think that's
seriously.
true.
That's true.
It's true. If it does not affect them, they do not pay attention.
That's right.
They don't always know. I've had people come up to me
They
and
may
say,
be
why don't
interested.
such and such happen? And it's like, it has, it does, and I give them some facts, but they're just unaware of, they say, one woman came up to me, and this is a woman who's been active in town. She said, nothing ever goes on in Waldoboro. There are no plans, nothing. And
Well, it's easy to say,
that's very easy
and it's
to
usually
say.
on Facebook.
And I had to
True.
tell her a few things. I said, well, where, and the thing was, she didn't know. But so, how do what do we need to do to get some of even the little things, sometimes the little things. I think Facebook is a really good, because a lot of people are on it, and the people who are,
The only problem I have with Facebook is, we post things on our side, but then stuff gets posted in other places.
Yeah.
And then these discussions go
Oh,
on
yes,
and on and on, and I'm just like, sometimes, and I don't always know, because believe it or not, I can't spend, we could literally have somebody spend that could be their job, just perusing Facebook. But
clipping.
there are
Clipping.
people, at least in town, who know, hey, sometimes I'll get just so you know, this was on Facebook, you might want to check it out. And that way I can explain it, because we do try to nip things, especially if there's a lot of misinformation out there. But you're right, it is hard, because, and what you said is true, 99.9% of the time, okay, I'm gonna go it was probably 98% of the time. In my career that spanned 35 years. Ooh, I'm dating myself. Yeah. When people would decide to run for governing body positions, I would say 98% of the time, in my experience, it was somebody who had sat in the audience about something they were unhappy about and didn't like, and said, I'm going to make a difference. And that was how their careers got started. Very few are just like, oh, I want to serve because, I think maybe to be honest with you, Maine's been the exception to that. Prior to my arrival, that was always, oh, there's an issue, I have to get involved. But I'm hoping, though, that if we take a while to do this and we do it well, people will get involved. We'll get maybe some people we don't always see, and they'll tell two friends, and so on and so on. And that's kind of what I'm hoping for.
Perhaps some of those Facebook people who are active in that, and Julie did a wonderful job today, or yesterday, whatever day it was, that had to do with parking spaces downtown. And those things kind of grow, into, they take on a life of their own, but she got very quickly, went in and very nicely, just told them the facts, nothing but the facts,
Well, and
it-
sometimes that's hard for people to understand. So, why were we so delayed with some of the downtown striping and
Yeah.
things like that?
Yeah.
Well, we had the contractor.
Yeah.
The contractor was behind. Why was the contractor behind? Because there's paint that he couldn't get. Literally, we had Matt Lucas from the town of Damariscotta saying, anybody got any striping paint? Because they didn't have any and they needed some and the order was a long way away. So, people just don't understand.
It's just like parts, like I was discussing with you earlier, with my truck. I got the only tie rod in the country for my Ford Raptor, the only one, and it was out in the Midwest. And I can't get ball joints, I can't get, rack and pinion for my truck. It's nowhere. It's not even, it doesn't exist. It's ridiculous. So it's sitting at the shop waiting to get parts put on it and they can't get them.
we can borrow
it's-
my 21-year-old truck.
Oh, I got another truck, but it's like you said, paint. I met a guy this spring that he's a contractor. That's what he does is paint places. And he's going to other states to pick up paint where it's available because he cannot get it in his state, in Ohio. They're driving to Tennessee, Florida, Georgia to get paint to do their job because they can't get it in their own state. So, it's very frustrating.
It is. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to kick it off at our first meeting in September. And if we could do a workshop starting at 5, that would be great, if you don't mind.
Do you need a motion for that?
No, we could just,
I'd make that motion.
Yeah, we just put it on the,
I'll just put it on the agenda.
just do the agenda, an
Yep.
agenda item.
Yep, that sounds good. I think it's exciting.
I'm excited.
Yep.
I'm excited. I'm happy.
Cool. I guess that's one thing for the agenda.
Some great questions
Next
on here.
meeting agenda?
Well, that's for the
That's-
following,
Yes, okay.
unless you don't want to
Two
have
meetings
a
ago.
second August meeting, because people will be away.
So I guess that depends on DOT if they get back to you on,
Yes. And then we do have Karen Ann scheduled for the next meeting.
okay. So if if we don't really have much other than
Oh,
DOT and.
Karen in the DOT meeting.
Yep.
We'll
Is
probably
there
have
anything
more.
else? Is there anything else anybody?
Did you want to talk about the Waldo Borough birthday?
Oh.
That was something that
I
you
have
had in your
not had,
report.
just so you know, I have not had anybody volunteer for that committee.
I'm
I put
surprised
it out on
the Historical
Facebook.
Society hasn't.
Well, they have 2 volunteers,
So, okay, so you have 2.
but they were built in.
Right.
But no members of the public at large have volunteered for that committee, just so you know.
We're still looking for a transfer station committee member from Waldo.
But this is a party.
Right.
I mean, you're right, it is a party. It
People
ought to
should
be
want to
very
be
different.
excited.
We need
It's a
somebody
party.
from the fire department because
That's
they did,
exactly what I was gonna say.
they did such a good job
They
with
did a
their
good job. We should
anniversary.
have a carnival.
Well, they
and stuff
are
like
in the
that.
process of planning their convention, which is in September. It starts, I believe, on the 11th.
This
The 10th,
September?
yes.
Okay, so then
Big. So after that, you
we'll
might
get them
find more
after that,
people.
as soon as they're,
But there's gonna be a big parade.
yep, they do a great job.
The night of September 10th, September 11th, the 20th anniversary of September 11th is this year. There will be a special memorial service held Friday evening here, in observance of that anniversary.
Cool. Does anybody get anything else? So I guess we'll move on to executive session. Is that all right with everyone?
Yeah, I'll move that we convene an executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA, section 405(6).
Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Ruben, it was nice to see your face.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's nice
All
to
those
see
in
you.
favor?
Nancy.
Thank you so